And exclusive for you right now, James Davis, the former CFO of the Stanford Financial Group, will be arraigned today in a federal court in Houston. Davis is expected to plead guilty in his involvement to an alleged multi-billion-dollar Ponzi scheme. Adam Shapiro joining us now in Houston with an exclusive interview with James Davis's attorney. Adam.
That's right, Brian. We're joined live and exclusively with David Finn, who's representing Mr. Davis, and he joins me now to explain what's going to happen today. There's a little bit of confusion. Mr. Davis is eventually going to plead guilty to the 3 charges against him, but will that happen today, or is that going to be later?
No, that'll probably be in 1 to 2 weeks. The government has filed a motion requesting more time to notify all the victims, the investors, and we respect that. And also in Houston, you cannot enter a guilty plea in front of the magistrate. So I anticipate within 1 to 2 weeks we'll be back here in federal district court, Judge Hittner's court, and we will plead guilty to all 3 counts in the information.
Now, the key to this, and it's very similar to what happened with Mr. Madoff, allowing victims a chance to respond to how they feel about a plea agreement. And let's make no mistake, there is a deal. Mr. Davis has cooperated with the investigators. He has given them the information. So he has struck a deal. What is he going to get in return for this information?
We have signed a plea agreement, and we do have an agreement in place that I don't believe has been unsealed yet. My client's looking at anywhere from 20 to 30 years in the penitentiary under the statutory cap. If the 3 counts are consecutive, it's 30. If they run concurrent, it's 20. Obviously, we're hopeful that the government and the investors will appreciate the fact that we've been cooperating for 3 months. We will continue to cooperate, and we're going to tell the truth.
Well, I think a lot of people, thousands of investors out there, want to know the truth. And I'm going to ask you a very blunt question. According to your client, the CFO of Stanford Financial Group, Stanford International Bank, did Alan Stanford steal these billions of dollars that he's accused of, misappropriating?
Let me answer that indirectly. Based on what I know, and I've been in on quite a few interviews over the course of the last several months, this enterprise was smoke and mirrors, baling wire and duct tape for 15 to 20 years. It was phony from the beginning. You had to have accountants that didn't account, regulators that didn't regulate, auditors that didn't audit, lawyers that didn't do their job. And did my client drop the ball and break the law? Absolutely he did. But at the end of the day, follow the money. Follow the money, and you'll see that very little of that money went into Jim Davis's pocket.
In fact, when you say follow the money, I'm thinking of Laura Pendergast Holt. I don't believe any of the money went into her pocket either. It all seems to have gone to Mr. Stanford the way the government is describing it. He would give himself loans from Stanford International Bank, which he controlled. He would then buy property. He would inflate the value of the property, give the property deed to the bank as payment for the loan, and pocket the difference. Is that accurate? Is that how this was pulled off?
That's essentially accurate. You've got a property or an asset that gets booked at $2 million. It gets floated to Stanford individually and put back on the company books, and all of a sudden it's worth $2 billion. I mean, it is what it is.
The government has also talked about secret bank accounts worldwide. They talked about $100 million missing from a bank account in Switzerland.
Right.
Was Mr. Davis aware of that, and does he know where any of the monies may still be and where these other secret bank accounts are located?
3 months ago, when we first sat down with the SEC and Rose Romero and also FBI, their number one question to my client was, do you know where this money is? And we signed probably 50 releases focused on Switzerland and Geneva accounts to try to give the federal government access to those accounts. Now, whether they were able to retrieve any of those funds, I don't know. I didn't ask and they didn't tell me, but I can tell you that that was the focus of the investigation early on.
And so there's more than just that one account, more than that $100 million Swiss account?
Absolutely.
And do you think that the receiver will, or the federal government will be able to recover funds given how many different foreign governments are involved in the battles that are already brewing to recover funds?
I know that they're working very hard to try to recover any funds that are available. Every time we meet with the government, we were here all of last week, that issue continues to come up. Are there other accounts? Where is the money? Everybody wants to follow the money, including the investors.
So let me recap this with you. Your client says this was smoke and mirrors from the very beginning. That's going back to the 1980s. The government's only alleging fraud since '99 with the sale of the CDs.
I'm telling you it goes back at least 10 to 15 years. This was not done and cooked up overnight.
And Mr. Davis was aware of the fraud. You're saying that Mr. Stanford, your client is saying Mr. Stanford was aware of the fraud. Anybody else aware of the fraud, or were others just perhaps ignorant but allowed this to continue through their ignorance, like Laura Pendergast Holt, Mr. Kurt, any of those people?
I don't want to speculate on the others, but I can tell you I think the evidence will show that quite a few people had active knowledge of the fraud, some had constructive knowledge, and quite a few people basically engaged in what I would call willful blinding, where you've got an ostrich putting his or her head in the sand and ignoring the reality all around you. I mean, if you're in a room and you smell the smoke, you see the smoke, and it's getting hot, chances are there's a fire outside the door. That's what I'm talking about.
So let me wrap this up, just 2 or 3 more questions. Mr. Davis, will he leave this courthouse today, or will he be taken into custody?
The government has not indicated to me they're not filing a motion to remand, so I anticipate with no criminal history, he will hopefully be released at some point today on some sort of reasonable bond. I would anticipate $5,000 to $10,000 cash, and then probably $300 to $500 in sureties, promissories.
And last question for you. What would your client say to the thousands of victims of Stanford International Bank, Stanford Financial Group, and the turmoil this has caused in their lives?
Biggest mistake I've ever made in my life, and I'm really sorry. And I know that that's an explanation. It's not an excuse, and he knows he's going to pay a heavy price for what he did.
And I know it's going to make headlines, but this absolutely, you're saying from the beginning, because these were college buddies, Mr. Davis and Mr. Stanford, this whole financial enterprise was a fraud from the start.
They were college roommates at Baylor for 1 semester, and what I'm telling you in the audience is this goes back a number of years.
Is there a surprise that we're going to learn of in the next couple of hours or next couple of days that people are not quite aware of yet?
Stay tuned.
I think that there's something coming. You can't say, though, can you?
The investigation continues, and they're working 24/7.
And more people to be drawn into it?
We'll see.
All right. David Finn, thank you very much. So I'm going to throw it back to you, Brian, but there you see and hear it. This was a fraud, according to CFO James Davis, his attorney telling you exclusively on Fox Business from the beginning. It was a fraud.
Well, Adam, listen, I know it's not necessarily for you to comment on the legality of it, but just from that interview, it appears that Mr. Stanford's own case has gotten a lot more difficult.
We're going to have to call Dick DeGuerin's office to see how they would respond to what's just been said.
All right, Adam Shapiro with an exclusive interview here, first on Fox Business as well, with the attorney for Mr. James Davis. Powerful stuff.